Yesterday during the panel on Why Bharat Matters, Ambassador Trigunayat made the point as to how the book by Dr. Jaishankar was in some ways a report card on the foreign policy of the Modi government. Well, Bharat also has a national security dimension, one that is equally critical. How does the report card look there? So I thought it wise today, of course, with the permission of Abhinav and the chair, to share some of those thoughts in my allotted time of 15 minutes with the gathering of scholars and practitioners here for deeper scrutiny and wider debate. Bharat, the national security dimension. Especially so since in my mind, the subject has not garnered enough attention either in the media or in the wider, more thoughtful strategic community. So here are the key postulates of my thesis. Actually, it's a recounting of India's national security story over the last decade. Yesterday Ambassador Puri was mentioning, Yuva Shakti, Nari Shakti. So this is about Sainik Shakti. And this is what I have to say before you. They are my views, but do kindly listen. I believe that in the 10 years of its existence, the Modi government has laid a very strong foundation for India's national security makeover. In my view, the most ambitious, bold and far-reaching reforms in defense and national security since independence. So while a very strong edifice has been laid, given the enormity of the and the complexity of the challenges that line India's national security path, multiple transitions still need to be made to complete the national security makeover. But a transformational start has been made. Now, what is this enormity and complexity? I'll be the first to admit that the China challenge is huge. China, it's the PLA's transformation, its signature projects, the rocket force and the strategic support force, its transition to digital combat is something that we must look at far more seriously than we are doing today. And complexity, I'll quote General Mark Milley, the recently retired Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman Joint Chiefs of USA. He says the character of war in recent times has undergone the most profound changes in recorded history. So both the enormity and the complexity. And what is this change in recorded history? In terms of technology, talent and innovation, that's how national security is changing. So I'll just give you two very quick examples. Technology. So all militaries know how important the OODA loop is. The observe, orient, direct and act. Now this OODA loop has been dramatically changed by artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is all about pattern recognition. And if you have to run through the OODA loop fast, AI there is doing wonders. I'll just give you one example. So post 7th October, the Israelis and its proxies have fired about 150 times on American combat assets and bases in the Middle East. And in 149 of them, who has won that game? It's not the mighty America. It's the Israelis and the Houthis using low-cost AI. So this is the power of a symmetricity, and this is how the game in national security is changing. Talent. Today, the partner of Spacecom is not NASA. It is not Boeing Lockheed. It is Elon Musk. It is these guys who are changing it. Ukraine today is still in the fight because of innovation. Helsing and 250-odd companies, most of them from the Silicon Valley, have changed the nature of the Scotland and company battles in Ukraine. And Russia is, of course, winning because its military-industrial complex is better. Now, these are the changes that we have to bring in our national security framework: technology, talent, innovation. And in that sense, this transformational start that I'm talking about is extremely significant. So the grand strategic geometry of this makeover was laid out by the Prime Minister himself in a landmark address to the combined commanders in December 2015 about the INS Vikramaditya. It is on the net. It is virtually a grand strategy. For the younger scholars here, do go to this address and you will see. It was remarkable for its breadth of vision and clarity of purpose. It spoke about a number of things: the need for transformations in our beliefs and doctrines, attaining the right balance in our maritimity and connectivity, so revisiting our strategic outlook, looking at Indian traditions of statecraft de novo, technological revamp, structural corrections like the theatre commands, cultural transitions. He spoke of the need to pivot from mere platform acquisitions to talent acquisitions. And he said two very different things. For the first time he said, and I'm paraphrasing him roughly, he said, we've had a lot of leaders in the Indian Army, in the Indian Armed Forces, who've been valorous and brave. We now need thought leaders who can drive change through the national security system. The second thing he said, he spoke about calibrated capacities and power projection. No Prime Minister had done this before that. It's not, about a military which is going to jackboot around the world, but calibrated capacities, and I'm quoting him again, to protect Indian citizenry and interests across the world. Now, all this was from somebody who understood the military greatly, its deeper nuances, what ailed it, and what precisely we needed to do, and that's why it was remarkable. It was such a significant departure from some of the state addresses we were used to. It was so ambitious that given our experience with many stillborn ventures like the Naresh Chandra Committee, 5 years to recommend why we need the CDS and 5 years to stall it, classical lazy drift, that within the military, me personally, there were deep misgivings, even skepticism. There was an overwhelming sense which said, ye to ho hi nahi sakta. And while our soldierly combat instinct said that the Prime Minister was right, our experiential learning told us that this would not happen, because there were too many saboteurs still out there in the world. This time, however, the reforms have unfolded, and please look at them, bit by bit, in precise tranches, but with unfailing regularity and dogged resolve. And I'm sanguine that they will only grow bigger and even faster in the times to come. The first in the series is, of course, the CDS DME. Please study it carefully. It is more powerful in conception and sweep than the Barry Goldwater Nichols, which is really the gold standard globally in terms of military integration. And it corrected a major anomaly in the civil-military relations narrative because it restored to the services their legitimate voice in strategic military affairs. It exhorted them to think for themselves and said that I have now empowered you, now you drive the change in the national security frame, of course under robust political control. And we are seeing how difficult that is with, over the theatre commands. But it was quite unprecedented if you are familiar with the reality and machinations of the past. We saw these new normals in our strategic outlook. Abandonment of a defensive crouch, Barakot, Kailash. Now, they were not perfect operations, but they demonstrated a political will and a considerable risk-taking ability. In swift strikes, we signaled to our adversaries what would have taken months of tortuous diplomacy to accomplish. And the message was clear that for adventurism, there will be cost to pay. And they are pretty significant in terms of operational deterrence and stability that has since manifested both along the line of control and the LAC. On the LAC today, there is parity, if not ascendancy. The operational rebalancing which took place, the decisive change in our force posture, which was very Pakistan-oriented and not China-oriented, reflecting the threat more accurately. And then the most, I think, significant reforms, root and branch, is what is known as Atmanirbharta in defense. We realized that capacity was the father of strategic intent, and it goes beyond the critical objective of self-reliance. And in hindsight, it was extremely far-sighted. Today you see that neglect of the American military-industrial complex and its atrophying statecraft has brought the Americans, this very formidable military, to this very sorry pass. Today in Ukraine, the Americans are trying to step up their capacities of something as simple as artillery ammunition. And they can make it or build it up to 1.5 million rounds per month only by 2025. America. And the Russians have already got a capacity of 5 million rounds per month. In Arvika, while the Russians were firing 10,000 rounds, the Ukrainians could muster only 1,000, 10:1. In some other areas, it is 15:1. In the Taiwan contingency, the mighty Americans don't have 7 days of missiles and precision munitions for a fight. American studies admit that the Chinese military-industrial complex is 5 to 6 times more powerful and faster than the American complex. So, this opera of failing deterrence. Act 1 was Afghanistan, Act 2 was Ukraine, Act 3 was in the Middle East, and Act 4 would be in Taiwan, is all because of neglect of its military-industrial complex. And today, Americans are questioning why spend $950 billion, have 800 bases, 11 aircraft carriers, when you seem to be, your deterrence seem to be failing in every theater. Now look at these significance, the changes that were made in our Atmanirbharta in defense. For the first time, we've been talking of innovation, energy, and enterprise. I'm paraphrasing the Prime Minister when he says that the purpose of this Atmanirbharta in defense is to liberate the forces of innovation, energy, and enterprise from the scourge of process and procedure, Niyamo ka jal. And this business of Tata Airbus, which is challenging monopolies like HAL, innovation and process reform, and we are looking de novo at our own procurement models, discarding flopping models of the West. Now, all these are big changes that are occurring, and they're extremely significant, because if you prioritize process over outcome, you will get the result which, Zelensky voiced at the Munich Security Conference when tired of the slow motion response of the West. He said that enemy artillery does not go silent because of the complexity of your Byzantine procedures. Now, these are all the things, which Atmanirbharta in defense is about, and the fruits are already apparent. You have an Indian startup, Third iTech, who's got a deal in Predators with an American corporate major. 114 AI is doing maritime space awareness with another American corporate major. These things were unheard of in my time. Absolutely significant reforms. And all this goes well. India, with the fullness of time, will emerge as a defense powerhouse. These startups will scale up. They will become national champions. And why should we not think in those terms? If the Chinese today, out of 22, defense majors in the world, 7 are Chinese, why can't 2 to 3 be Indians? So these are the changes, Atmanirbharta and defense, OFB reform. This whole business, OFB was this dumb munition behemoth. It is being challenged now to deliver on precision capacities. There are small companies like Solar Industries, led by a gentleman by Satyanarayan Nuwal from a very humble background, but a plucky defense entrepreneur. He set up the largest explosive factory in the world. He's exporting to USA, Israel, and Sweden. And the icing on the cake is DRDO reforms. I never thought in my lifetime DRDO, which was this great scientific enterprise, very talented but not delivering on many issues, they've been put through this Defense Technology Council under the PM's direct superintendents. And you have members from the private sector and startups on the board. Absolutely unheard of. And somehow these changes have not got captured in the wider narrative. So I just thought there are a couple of other issues. Just as I was told 15. Unless you want to show me your history. So, lovely things are happening, like civil-military fusion, defense coming out of the shadows of foreign policy. There's no time because we are in a hurry here, but extremely substantive reforms. At least the young scholars here, I would seriously urge you to study them in depth. And if you study them in depth, the critiques that emerge will make our national security system even more strong. One point I'd like to significantly highlight. Just notice how Delhi is emerging as the hub of global ideation in national security and foreign policy. Ambassador Puri yesterday made this point about words and narratives mattering. Raisina has become a fount of deep conversations in foreign policy. And now we have begun to shape conversations in national security. For the first time after years of resistance, the Indo-Pacific Army Chiefs Conference was held in Delhi, 33 chiefs around the world, UK, USA, Brazil, Tonga and Singapore, followed up by the Chanakya Defense Dialogue, which was addressed by the Honorable Vice President, the Global Technology Summit. And so we are shaping conversations in national security and foreign policy, never done before. So I think, all these things are extremely important. And in summation, I'll just say this, that we must acknowledge that we have successfully navigated great change in style and substance, Shaili or Sar. We have untied many Gordian knots. We must celebrate what we have achieved. And December 2015 is an extremely significant moment in our national security. A good analogy might be with the liberalization moment in the economy that took place in 1990. But we must, in all humility, realize that we do have to leverage these achievements to step up the game further in pace and scale, deepen the conversation, thoughtful ideation, concerted follow-up action, because as I told you, we still have the enormity of the China challenge and the complexity of the challenge of character of war. So, these needs to be done. There are so many subjects to be explored. I'll just give you 2 examples. One is of asymmetric addressing, like somebody was talking of defense budgeting. America's defense budget is 3 times that of China.
America. China's defense budget is also roughly 3 times that of India. Why is it that Beijing is causing displacement anxiety in Washington and we don't cause similar displacement anxiety in Beijing? Because of all these secondary, tertiary reforms. It's just not about money alone. And yet, there's another point. China recently announced its defense budget. Its growth annually was 7.6%. It is far more than its economic growth, which is 3 to 4%. India, we are spending only about 2% on our defense, but our economy is growing at 7%. So are the Chinese reckless or is India wise? So there are so many issues in defense of deep complexity, which must be debated further in the context of what I said. And since we've been talking about our civilization text, let me just conclude with these very wise words of Acharya Chanak. He said, "कि अगर शास्त्र को भूलोगे, तो अपनी संस्कृति खोलोगे." So it's extremely important that we tap the wisdoms of our cultural texts and see how we can strengthen our strategic culture, develop better traditions in statecraft. So, अगर शास्त्र को भूलोगे, तो अपनी संस्कृति खोलोगे. But he also went on to say, कि अगर शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे, तो राष्ट्र खोलोगे. So we must nurse the instrument of force carefully and position it very thoughtfully in our strategic calculus. I think with those words, I will come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, General Sir. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you to the panel for such an illuminating talk. It was very interesting to see different perspectives. My name is Khushi Shukla. I'm a student from Pondicherry University. And my question is to Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. So I just wanted to know if you weigh in on non-traditional military threats that are emerging in today's time. For example, I'm specifically talking from the perspective of climate engineering. So we have new technologies such as sun dimming technologies, cloud seeding, which can be again used to curb monsoon carrying winds. So these kind of technologies also are creating a new era of tensions or new era of threats. So do you think this has been recognized in the current defense policies, with whatever has been decided by the government?
About climate engineering, this issue I'm aware of has been investigated at some depth in the past. I'm not quite aware of the current position of it. But it's not only this issue. As I was trying to explain, you look at Ukraine, people call it the First World War with drones, which means there are two distinct dimensions. One is, of course, this traditional squadron company battles, the blood and the gore, all that has not changed. But the character of war, I was quoting Mark Milley, he's saying it's the most profound changes in recorded history. And look what AI is doing there, what drones are doing there. Look what, the power of asymmetricity, the magic of precision. I'll give you this asymmetricity. See, look what's happening to the Americans. So a drone costs $20,000. So the Iranians and their proxies fired 3 of them. So to intercept it, you fire a $2 million missile. And if it brings it down, out of the 3, you'll get down just 1. 2 get through, and if they get through, they will hit a ship costing $20 billion with 300 sailors. This is how the Iranians have opened up a factory in Tatarstan, in Russia, which are just doing low-cost drones. Look how data is being sold. Palantir CEO walked across to Zelensky and said, just give me your data. I'll give you all products and services free. So AI and associated technologies have been integrated across the grids of war, from fire, maneuver, logistics. AI is being used to do blood transfusion in trenches. So it's absolutely dramatic, things that you are talking of, non-combat, non-traditional. And therefore, recruitment patterns are changing. The Ukrainians today, their battalions have 1 software engineers and 2 coders. Unheard of in our context. You don't think of software engineers in combat. AI in Pentagon is being driven by Craig Martin. Who's Craig Martin? He's neither a civil servant nor a soldier. He was doing machine learning for Lyft, a cab company. So I can give you hundreds of examples like this. AI and 250 companies from Silicon and the big tech world have made fortunes. There's a
particular startup called Helsing in Ukraine. From a startup, it has become a unicorn. So all non-traditional combat. But what is also happening is that in these areas, they're being fused with actual combat. You look at Russian air power, for 2 years you would have seen, it was just not there even on the horizons. It's taken them 2 years to convert all their dumb munitions with low-cost engineering of this kind to make them precise. And suddenly in Advika, air power is back. And it contributed greatly to the Russian victory. So there is a huge space for what is non-traditional, emerging, ISET kind of technologies. And that is what is so good about Atmanirbharta and defense, because it anticipated it. And a lot of that good stuff is happening. And today if you go to IIT Delhi, there are at least 20 startups, each startup with 60 IT engineers working late into the night. So a lot of these good things are happening. And I also make that point about talent. So now national security needs good, young talent like you people. You must come.
And you'll be hearing about it in the next session after this on digital.
For our Israeli diplomat. First of all, the sources of information about what's happening in Gaza is not only Hamas, but the spokesman of the Israeli military, who always brags about what he has done inside Gaza. And secondly, all United Nations organizations and all these international NGOs who testify to what is happening in Gaza. So if you want to belie the sources of the Minister of Health of the Palestinian Authority, fine. But what about the rest of the world? So please, clarify this point for you. The second one is, why did Israel change its contract with China in 2020 when they really wanted to sell them or allow them to manage the Haifa port, or manage it, and then you turn to India later on, to Adani, I think. So what was the reason for this? Thank you.
Misinformed on the second one. Period. Point blank. They want you're wrong about this. The Adani friend here can tell you. That's first. Second, on the number, we can talk about numbers in all directions. No, he can tell you later. It's from Adani. But I can tell you from the government of Israel, you're wrong about this. The second, in regards to numbers, everybody is utilizing the 32,000 number coming out from the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which is a Hamas. It's a Hamas government. They're utilizing the number of Hamas. And that's why UNRWA repeats it like a parrot, and that's why others repeat it like a parrot. Now you can wait until the end of the war, and you can see if those that were running around in civilian clothes, putting a Kalashnikov in their hands, shooting, putting a Kalashnikov down and running to the street, if they are fighters or non-fighters. But if you're taking the number of a terror organization, you're supporting the terror organization. Take numbers when they are real numbers. And this is a part and parcel of the disinformation, misinformation campaign going around. Now yes, we are 9.5 million Jews that are doing whatever they can to put the truth out. And yes, there are 300 million that would be very happy to put other things out there, but it's not truth. It's speculation, and it's wrong. And when Hamas starts acting like, and we don't have to agree, when it starts acting like a military and wears combat uniforms, you will know if they're soldiers. They have not done it yet.